Hey gang, it's Squill, and something interesting I've noticed recently is that there seems to be a rise in meta humor. For those unaware, meta humor is whenever a show or film makes some sort of self-aware joke or commentary about its own existence. This isn't the same as a fourth wall break in which a show or film acknowledges the fact that it's a show or film, however the two can definitely overlap. Personally, I have very mixed thoughts on this form of humor. I think when used subtly, it can be a great way for a show to poke fun at itself. But a lot of media tends to overuse it nowadays, to the point where it just comes across as very lazy. It can be hard taking these characters seriously when they're constantly reminding you the fact that they're in a story. Again, this type of humor isn't inherently bad, it just has to be used sparingly. And one show that I think has a very interesting relationship with meta humor is The Simpsons. So I thought it'd be fun to take a look at how the show has handled meta humor over the years. We're gonna be discussing 4 different episodes, each taking place in a different era in the show's history. So, to quote Mario himself, let's-a go! The first episode we're going to be talking about is Season 8, Episode 14, The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Show. Depending on what you consider to be the classic years, this is the only one of those episodes we're going to be talking about here. But man, what a perfect episode. I mean, it's the Poochie episode. What an iconic character, absolute legend. I could go on and on about how funny this episode is, but what's more interesting to me is its commentary on the state of the show itself. The show was on Season 8 during this time, which I know feels early considering the show is on Season 34 right now, but when you take things into perspective, 8 seasons is a lot more than a lot of other shows get. And you can definitely feel the writers getting self-conscious here. There started being a divide in the fandom, one between those who enjoyed the wacky, zanier episodes, and those who preferred when the show was more grounded and down-to-earth. But along with that, there's also just the obvious fear of the show getting stale and repetitive. I mean, how many times can we watch Homer and Marge go through a marriage crisis, or Lisa join a new group of friends, before it just gets repetitive? Well, 738 times to be exact. When you take all that into consideration though, it kinda makes sense why the Al Jean era, seasons 9 through 12, would focus far less on the show's heart and more on its comedic storytelling. I mean, you can only pull the same emotional beats so many times before they eventually lose their impact. But going back to the actual episode, the show basically uses Itchy and Scratchy as a vehicle to discuss the current state of The Simpsons itself, introducing a new character, Poochie, to boost ratings. The show even reflects this by introducing a 6th member to the Simpsons family, that being Roy. Hey wait, this is just Graggle, but before Graggle was a thing. Or Gumbly, or whatever he was called. This is obviously making fun of when shows in real life introduce new characters because they're running out of ideas. And I know the point is that Roy is a stupid character who adds nothing to the show, but I also weirdly kinda like Roy and I sorta wish they'd bring him back. There's also great commentary on obsessive, nitpicky fans who have to complain about every little detail, as well as obnoxious, entitled fans who feel as though the show owes them for being a viewer. Seriously, this whole exchange between Bart and Comic Book Guy aged like fine wine. Super indicative of the way people talk about media nowadays. And that's the Poochie episode. It's a fantastic episode of The Simpsons with a very interesting place within the show's history. It's right in the middle of what many people would claim to be the last golden age season of The Simpsons. And like with a lot of Season 8 episodes, it does feel like an episode that would be in the final season of a show. Rest in peace, Poochie. You may not have been funny. Next up, we have Season 11, Episode 22, Behind the Laughter. As you can probably tell from the title, this one's a big behind the music send-up, and it's a really creative concept. It basically treats the Simpsons family as if they are actors putting on a show. And what I think I love most about it is that the characters still are themselves. It's not like they're written to be completely different people. This is just what they'd be like if they were actors. There's some great references to earlier episodes too. Like, I love the reveal that after jumping the gorge in Season 2, Homer got addicted to painkillers. And that's how he's able to take such a beating in other episodes. That's such a funny reveal. In terms of the actual commentary, I think this one's pretty light compared to the other episodes we'll be talking about, but there's a couple things to dissect here. Like, they definitely make fun of the over-commercialization of The Simpsons, how it's almost impossible to not see Simpsons merchandise wherever you go, and how a lot of it isn't very good. They also make fun of the more gimmicky episodes, like the Armin Tamzarian reveal in Season 9, or the constant use of celebrity cameos. But as a whole, this one's mostly about the laughs. It's a fun, high-concept episode, and one of my favorites post-Season 8. And with that, here we jump all the way to Season 29, Episode 15, No Good Read Goes Unpunished. Of all the episodes we'll be talking about today, this is the only one I actually dislike. However, I don't think it's awful. Basically, Marge starts reading Lisa a book that she read when she was a child. However, upon reading it, realizes that the book is actually very insensitive and politically incorrect by today's standards. It actually sort of reminds me of that great scene in Jake the Dad from Adventure Time. It's not a bad premise at all, however, my issue with it is the way it tries to parallel the Apu controversy that was happening at the time. For those unaware, about a year before this episode aired, comedian Harry Kondabolu released a documentary criticizing Apu, claiming that he's a harmful stereotype of Indian people. Personally, I'm not really interested in talking about the Apu controversy itself. It's something that I keep finding myself going back and forth on, and as a white person, I don't really think it's my place to say. I just want to talk about how the episode itself handles the issue. I'm probably still gonna get comments calling me a woke SJW anyways, but hey, that's the internet for you. Hey, did you guys know that I'm gay? And asexual? And non-binary? Anyways, I think my main issue with this one is that they bring up the Apu controversy, but they don't actually say anything about it. Basically, the conclusion is that they're aware of the controversy, but they're gonna deal with it at a later date. Which would be fine if they didn't dedicate an entire episode to talking about it. I also want to point out that the scene is punctuated by a shot of front-facing Marge, which is just very cool. Hell, Apu himself doesn't even show up outside of a cameo in the B-plot. In my opinion, this is a bad example of a meta episode, because it doesn't use its meta commentary to actually say anything. If it was just an episode about Marge grappling with the fact that a book from her childhood is inappropriate by today's standards, it would have been perfectly fine. I mean, the story kind of fizzles out in an unsatisfying way, but it's not an awful episode. It's the fact that they forced in the Apu issue that bothers me, and they didn't even say anything interesting about it. Oh, also the subplot to this one is really stupid. Like, why is Bart annoyed by Homer pretending to be Flanders? Bart likes Flanders. Hating Flanders is Homer's thing. Moving back to an actually good episode, we have Season 34, Episode 3, Lisa the Boy Scout. This episode is crazy. This one starts out as a pretty standard Bart and Lisa rivalry episode, reminiscent of an episode like Lisa on Ice from Season 6. But about a minute in, it cuts to these hackers who say they're gonna cancel The Simpsons with show-ruining clips. And from there, it's basically just a bunch of fun one-off segments. There's a lot of segments in here, so instead of bringing up all of them, I'm just gonna discuss the most notable ones. They do this crazy one near the beginning where they sort of recreate the Cell animated Season 1 art style, and it looks so good. They basically have Bart from the future go back to the first episode and tell the family a whole bunch of stuff they're gonna predict. It's a fun way to make fun of the whole, ooh, The Simpsons predicts everything sort of rumor that the internet passes around. Wow, you guys, I can't believe The Simpsons predicted diseases. But for real, I can't believe how well they emulated the style. I mean, look at Homer's mouth here, it's so cool. They do another one in this art style near the end where they make fun of the whole "it was all just Homer's dream" theory. And this one's really funny too. There's this one where it's revealed that Martin's actually been an adult this whole time, posing as an elementary school student. It's pretty reminiscent to the Principal Skinner is Armin Tamzarian reveal from Season 9, and fans would hate this if it were actually canon. Actually, it's funny because while the episode was airing, Matt Selman tweeted about this scene without the context, and believe it or not, A whole bunch of people just assumed it was real and that the show was ruined without even watching the episode. That's great. There's some other reveals like this too, like that Selma was actually Marge's mother the whole time, or that this guy whose name I don't know was actually a Grimwalker. Oh, and there's a part where they start showing the worst of the worst clips, and at a certain point it just becomes clips that have already been in the show. It's super funny. Oh, and at the end, it cuts back to the Bart and Lisa story, and it's just really funny to think that while we were watching all these clips, this whole episode was just playing out. It's a hilarious ending that does a great job mocking the cliché Simpsons plots they've done over the years. Lisa the Boy Scout is a fantastic episode. It feels like both a roast and a celebration of the legacy of The Simpsons. There's great meta-commentary about the show's fandom, and it's overall just really fun. It's one of the most experimental episodes they've done recently, as well as one of my new favorites. Okay, so technically I lied earlier when I said I was going to be talking about 4 different episodes, each from a different era, as I wanted to discuss the Simpsons World segment in this year's Treehouse of Horror episode. I mean, it's technically only a segment of an episode, so I only kinda lied. This one does something similar to Lisa the Boy Scout, where they sort of recreate a scene from Marge vs. the Monorail. It's so good. This one's basically about a bunch of Simpsons animatronics gaining sentience and trying to escape the Simpsons world. There are a ton of references to earlier episodes. This one sort of makes fun of how Disney has been using The Simpsons as a brand recently. You know, they'll use The Simpsons to advertise Disney Plus, or do those awful cross-promotional shorts. So the way I see it, this episode sort of mocks the hyper-brandization of The Simpsons. Is hyper-brandization a word? I feel like it should be, but I don't think I've heard it used before. If it's not, I'm coining it. And how eventually all of our favorite shows are gonna be a huge brand. It's honestly a pretty grim ending. Okay, whoever's out here hanging out at Big Mouth Mountain, we need to talk. Honestly, if there's anything I want you guys to take away from this video, it's that the currently airing season of The Simpsons, season 34, has actually been really good so far, and even if you're not a fan of recent Simpsons, I want you to at least check out Lisa the Boy Scout and the Treehouse of Horror. They're both legitimately excellent episodes. But for real, let me know how you guys feel about these meta episodes in the comments. And also if there are any other meta episodes or moments you think I should have talked about. Believe it or not, I've actually seen every episode of The Simpsons. It's just hard to remember every individual moment and episode, obviously. This is probably going to be my last video this year, so I want to thank you guys for sticking with me. I've made a lot of videos I'm really proud of this year, and every little piece of support I get helps. And I'll be back in January with the Adventure Time Season 10 videos. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Squill out.